Okay, and we're live with your boy, Long Transaction. That's not my real name, by the way. LT has become the nickname, but it's not my real name. I don't know if I'll ever share my real name. I think that's weird. I don't know, you guys could dox me. I don't like the idea of people knowing my name, but then I think, because I always have these really bad imaginations in my head where it's like, I'm going to give out my name, people are going to find where I live, they're going to send me a severed head, and then frame me for murder. But then in reality, I'm not that popular. So why would that happen? And anyway, there are a ton of people who are way more famous with millions of subscribers, and they have their name, they have like their birth date, they have everything except, I bet you could find their social security probably easily. And that's all just floating out there, and they don't seem to mind. But I did that thing again. Well, first of all, I've done the intro for this podcast already, and then I realized that I only had like 30 minutes on my camera, and I didn't feel like pausing it and then doing the clap thing again, you know. So I just restarted. But man, podcasts, I'm going to mention a couple of the key points. I wasn't on my game in that first intro anyway, so don't think you're missing out on anything very important. It was me kind of just bumbling around and not really being coherent, which is not good for a podcast because most people just listen to it to try to hear a story and not hear a bumbling fool. But the couple key points, I guess. The first thing was I did the thing where I didn't write down notes again. I have my computer here. I pulled up a notepad because I was like, hey, what do you want to talk about today? And then the other, you know how you do the angel things where you got like one guy who's saying one thing, then you have the other person who's saying the other thing. So I had on my right shoulder, they were like, hey, open up the notepad and make some good notes so you don't sound like a fool. And then on the other side, it's like, no, don't do that because it's more genuine if you don't write down notes and the conversation flows easily. But then on the right-hand side, again, it's like, yeah, that's true. It does flow easily, but sometimes you get sidetracked, LT, because you're stupid. And then the left side started to agree as well, and they're like, yeah, actually, that's true, and my voice has changed, so now I'm the same person. So I don't have notes, as per usual. And I sometimes get nervous to do these podcasts. I wanted to do once a week. I think it's good to have a schedule. I know some of the podcasts I listen to, actually some do have a schedule and some just upload whenever. I don't know which one. I like, I've mentioned this in every single podcast, but the Tiny Mate Gang podcast is my favorite podcast so far. And every Friday, I come home, actually this last Friday, I listened to it while I was at work because we weren't very busy. But usually I come home after a long week of just sending emails, and I listen to the podcast, and it's partly because I like the podcast so much that I get really happy and excited for it, and it's also because I know it's like that Pavlovian dog thing, you know. The dog starts salivating when it hears the treat being shook. I'm shook. Being shaken. I start salivating when I hear Noel Miller's soothing voice. But yeah, I don't know, man. I get slightly nervous for these podcasts just because there are no cuts, and if I mess up, which in those videos that I normally do, the Bayernas, I do mess up a lot, and I just cut it out, and no one knows any better, except I've now breached the secret. I don't know what my goal with these podcasts is, because I think it's just me kind of, here's some options. I'll lay them out for you. Number one, this could just be me liking to hear the sound of my own voice and trying to jump onto the podcast train because podcasts are in. Like, everyone's doing a podcast. I'm doing a podcast, so that, you know, it's in. Logan Paul is he doing a podcast? Eduardo, can we check that? So it could just be me jumping on the podcast train hoping to hit it big. It's just a lottery ticket. I don't know. That's really not the reason, but I'm trying to kind of dive into my brain here. The second option, which is probably the main option, is podcasts for me with this solo podcast that I'm doing, it's kind of like a therapy session, or at least a way for me to organize my thoughts. Because I have these thoughts that just pop up. Everyone has these, right? You just have one-off thoughts here and there. They're like, oh, that would be cool. Oh, I wonder why I'm doing this in my life. Questionable decisions, stuff like that. So this kind of is a way, instead of, I'm always lazy in writing lists down or like taking proper notes, which is kind of strange because in like a work environment at school, I wasn't lazy about that. But when it comes to my own life, I don't seem to follow those same rules, which is kind of strange. But I like to just lay things out. That's kind of like the whole notes, actually. Notes on the notepad, I didn't want to lay out because it wasn't genuine. Thoughts in my head, I didn't want to lay out because, I'm not really interested in doing that because I'm kind of lazy. But it's like a lazy because I don't think it would benefit me too much, which is probably not true because it most likely would benefit me. So that's option B. It's probably that one. Because I don't really like the sound of my voice anyway. Option C is maybe I'm doing this because I like podcasts, and usually in my head I'm like, I like this, I want to emulate that. I don't think that one's it either. It's probably the therapy one. There's also the option that I want just more content for you guys, and I want to do something without so much editing, which is that one. This is something that popped in my head. So, with Twitch has become, I've noticed the longer form stuff has kind of taken over in terms of social media. With Twitch and with podcasts, those are in vogue. Those are in vogue. People are enjoying those longer form stuff more. Which is funny because it's like the opposite of what Vine was. I always thought the shorter things got, the more enjoyable they were. Take that as you will. So after like Vine, I thought was the shortest form of media possible, and I didn't think that was. It was really popular. I'm kind of confused why they got rid of it. I guess it wasn't as viable. Instagram videos. Those are like in between Vine and YouTube videos. YouTube videos have actually become longer form instead of, because the first YouTube videos, you weren't even able to upload more than 15 minutes, right? So you would get the sketches, those were popular, maybe like 2 to 3 minutes, 4 minutes, nothing really past that. And then it seems over time, they've realized that watch time, it's coinciding with watch time from YouTube, pushing watch time, but it's also because I guess YouTube wants to be able to insert as many ads, and if you just have a 2-minute video, you can't put like 5 ads in it. It's like if you had a TV show and it was only 5 minutes, you couldn't just put a bunch of ads in there unless it's Jersey Shore. So I think it's funny because I always was in the camp of everyone's attention span is getting shorter, which still could be the case. But then if you look at social media, it seems almost as if it's going the opposite direction where everything is getting longer. I don't know. That's kind of strange. I've never thought about that. Same even with Twitter. Twitter used to be 90 characters and now it's doubled to like 180. I know it's not an article that people are reading, but still, I would expect them to cut it even shorter. I don't know. It's strange how sometimes people will just say something and then everyone else is like, hey, that guy seems smart. Let's all just repeat what he said. I'll have what he's having. And then that kind of just filters through and that becomes everyone's thought, even without people thinking really. They just kind of say it. They're like, this is what I've heard, so therefore it must be true. That's kind of cool. I wasn't really thinking about that. That's what you guys come here for, right? The podcast, the very intellectual stuff, the great banter. I did. Yeah. Okay. So, um, I was mentioning like what I think this podcast should be, and so it's hard with a one person podcast because with the True Geordie podcast, I've noticed that you've pretty much heard Brian True Geordie, his story. I'm sure he has a couple more stories, but they're not. You can't push them out for a whole podcast. And so with that, oh, I shouldn't hit the mic. With that, and also the H3 podcast, it's become you bring it. The main attraction is the guest. You still come in to listen to Ethan and Ela because you know them. They're like personable, and you're familiar with how they're gonna act. So if you just had the podcast alone with the guest, first of all, it'd be strange because you don't have people lobbing questions at them. So it's kind of like the onus is on them, and they have to basically just spill out their life. And you don't. It's harder when you don't have people to guide you. So it's always, I've noticed in life, everything seems to be easier when you have multiple people working on it. Whatever it is, just because you can bounce ideas off one another, brainstorming is easier. And instead of having one person get kind of, this is what happens to me with these podcasts. I get so focused on just trying to continue to talk that I don't always continue a conversation, even though it's with myself. I don't continue it into a deeper level, which that's why I think podcasts should probably be with more than one person. But I don't have anyone to do a podcast with, and I wouldn't really feel comfortable just like picking someone random, like someone on YouTube, and be like, hey, you want to collab with a podcast? Because that would just be so strange to me. You have to, in my opinion, you have to have an actual connection with someone if you're going to do this kind of podcast. Even if you're going to do like a comedy podcast, that would just, if you just picked two random comedians, even though comedians are they're good communicators. I mean, you have to be a comedian. That still would be strange, and I don't think it would really work out too well. That's kind of like the with all the podcasts that I listen to. Ethan and Ela, they have good chemistry. They're freaking married. Of course they have good chemistry. Noel Miller and Cody Ko, they're like they're rising comedians. They have a banterous relationship. They have banterous relationships. Ethan and Ela have banterous relationships. He always calls her his carer. David Dobrik and Jason Nash. David Dobrik always just calls Jason Nash old, and they play off that. You go back to something and you play off of it. With the other podcasts, what was it? Oh yeah, True Geordie and Lawrence. They it's banter, and it's almost like the podcast isn't the podcasters speaking to the listeners. That's with the Casey Neistat podcast. I did notice it seemed more to be, at least in the beginning, I've only listened to one episode anyway, it seemed more like they were talking to the podcast listeners instead of just having a conversation. And when I listen to a podcast, I don't really want them to always be talking to me. I mean, it's okay occasionally, but for the main part, I like to think of myself as just listening in on a conversation, and I don't have to participate. People hate participating in conversations if they're kind of shy. I'm not really that shy, but I'm not a big talker. So for me, it's just a way to have background noise. I like hearing stories. I've always liked to hear stories. I should probably do that more. Give story time with LT here. I was doing those with that like that Chick-fil-A stories idea. I only did one episode though. I could just throw them into these podcasts, honestly, but they're so short that I think it'd be better if I just did those as videos. I don't have too many though. I mean, off the top of my head, I've already done the He Got It On Me. That's like my favorite story. There's another story that has to do with bodily fluids. Yeah, I don't know. I've got maybe like 5 or 6, so it would be a pretty short thing. I could do stories about high school. That's maybe I'm debating whether I should do those in podcasts or whether I should do those in one-off videos. Because the one-off videos, I feel like one-off videos would be better. I don't know. I don't like repeating the same thing though, because I feel like it's wasting people's time. But then I listen to these podcasts and they say the same stories multiple times, but I don't care. It's not so much I'm there for the story. That I'm there for the story if I don't know who the people are and I see something that's like a clickbait title or something to hook you in. Arg. But as for once I'm there, I'm like a returning customer. I don't don't really care what's going on in the story. I'm just there for them. Like when you talk to a friend, you're not there because the friend's gonna entertain you. You're there just to be in the presence of their company, which is kind of strange, but that's just human to work. What did I even mention the comedy part? I don't know if I want this podcast to be funny. Someone in the last video, my buy or not, they told me, you're trying too hard to be funny, but I like you. But then I'm not trying to be funny. I'm more just trying to self-deprecate myself, which I think is funny. But in the past, I've heard PewDiePie say this as well. In the past, I tried way harder to be funny. I would like make consistent jokes that weren't funny, and I'd always try to be like, yo, what's up guys, LT here, long transaction, back with another video, blah blah blah. Now the character I've become is more, I'm making fun of my past self almost, because that past self was built basically just off of watching other FIFA YouTubers, and I'm like, oh, so this is how you have to act if you're a FIFA YouTuber. You gotta be like, yo, what's up guys, LT here, blah, 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 back with another episode, blah blah blah, which is kind of how all YouTubers have become when they're trying to specifically target younger kids. They gotta be like, yo, what's up guys, blah, 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 blah. You have to speak really quickly, and it seems to work. I don't know why it works, but it does. So I don't know, trying too hard, I don't think I'm trying at all. If anything, I give less of a hoot. I give less of a hoot now than I did before. And that's in the video. Like when I'm recording, I don't really care. But then when I do care is I have this really bad thing at like 11 p.m. or later where I'll always go onto a video and then I'm like, it's good, but the views could be better. Like now if I post a video, I'll probably get like anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 views, which is good. It's not about the money, but just so you guys know, that makes maybe like $7. It's maybe $7 at the most. But I'm always like, I do this thing where at night I always think, was it a good day or was it a bad day? And did I accomplish anything? But my thought has become so skewed because I'm always thinking in terms of views and in terms of subscribers and subscriber growth. And it's more analytics instead of what I think should be more important, which is the quality of the video getting better? Are the subscribers actually enjoying it? Which I think people like it. I get a lot of comments about, like, I like the video, which is really good. That's the whole point, to entertain people, not just to get numbers, because numbers does not equal good video content. I mean, just look at Rice Gum. But I always do it, and then I'll look at people who I've only been doing YouTube for, well, I say only, but I've been doing it for about 3 years now in terms of FIFA stuff, 4 years in terms of music. And I always look at other people and compare myself to them. And it's been especially hard with like Fortnite people, and I'm not trying to say this because I think these Fortnite people don't deserve it, and I'm not trying to say that I deserve it, but I look at someone like Daquan, TSM Daquan, in I think December, he had maybe 800 subscribers, 700 subscribers. So I had way more than he did. I had thousands more than he did. And now he just did a hairline reveal at 1 million subscribers. And it just blows my mind, because I'm always like, could that have been me in an alternate universe? I played more Fortnite, because I'm not great at Fortnite. I'm good enough. I'd say I'm above average. But I started playing in like late January, more towards early February. And it's been about 3 months maybe, or 4 months of playing Fortnite. Whereas these people started playing in July, had several more months, like almost half a year more to play than what I've had. And so if I had been really good, could that have been me? Or I do the same thing with people in music. With music especially, it kind of, that one like irritates me. Not because I don't think they deserve it or because I deserve it, but because I'm like, I think my music's okay. I don't think it's that great, but I think it's good enough that there are people out there who would enjoy it, but they just don't seem, for whatever reason, they don't seem to find it, or they don't continually come back, whatever that may be. But like I can post a cover, and I've spent a lot of money on like equipment and trying to make the production value go up way higher. And I'll notice that I might get like 20 views or something really, really low. Whereas other people who, they have probably a better voice than I do. They might play the guitar better than I do. But the production quality just seems that like it's not that great. And I'm kind of like, I mean, this is a good performance, but I think I've had videos that are better. And they'll have like millions of views, and then everyone in the comments is like, oh, this is great, please do this song. And it's like they just keep coming back. And then I'm just sitting there like, damn, maybe I'm bad at this. And I'm caught up in my own world where I'm like, no, you can do whatever you want. I don't know. That just, like, right, what time is it now? It's 7:45. So right now I'm not thinking those thoughts. I'm only saying it for the podcast. But I can guarantee you, in about 3 hours, I'm going to be sitting there in my bed trying to go to sleep because I have to go to work tomorrow. And I'm like, damn, in another world, I was a famous YouTube Fortnite player, or like a FIFA YouTuber. Same thing with FIFA YouTubers. Some of these guys I don't really like. There's some guy named X Exception, and I saw today that he had a video where it was like reacting to all the team of the season, which is basically the same thing I did, but my video was like 15 minutes. His video was a live stream for an hour. So yet again, I don't like to hate on people because everyone has their own path. So I'm not going to hate on him. This isn't hate. This is just me critiquing, and critique doesn't have to be hate. But he's not a great FIFA player. I'm not a great FIFA player, but I'm better than he is. And to be honest, I don't think he knows much about FIFA, because he's more just a clickbait guy who opens packs. And then he has, like, I don't know how many subscribers he has, but he has hundreds of thousands more than I do. And then I'm like, well, why do people go to his channel? Just for the clickbait? If I did clickbait, if I had just been doing clickbait this entire 3 years, would I have like 1 million subscribers? Should I have been doing clickbait? Am I stupid for not doing that? The answer for me is always I'm not going to, because if I were going to clickbait, I would have done it 2 years ago. I'm not going to just change now, because even though it is the best way to grow on YouTube, I'm not going to do it. I wanted to do this experiment, and I did one video about it, but I created a YouTube channel. I don't even remember what it's called, but the Gmail or the email is called like timriggins69@gmail.com. If you don't know who Tim Riggins was, he was a fictional character in the TV show Friday Night Lights, and he was really Southern. He was from Texas. He was a football player, and he was just kind of stupid, and just Tam Reagans. That's how whenever I think of him, I go Tam Reagans. So I created his account, and my idea was to just post really terrible videos where I have one video on there. I might try to put it in the comments if I can remember. I don't know if I'll be able to find it. But I would basically just clickbait the title. The video itself would be just garbage, and it would just be me uploading it, like poor quality overall, no editing, just straight upload, raw edit. But then I would spam tags, random tags. I would clickbait the title, clickbait thumbnails. I would do sub for sub with other people. And even though I only had one video, I think I have 50 subscribers. I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure I have like 50 subscribers just because I spammed so many people. The clickbait thumbnail was there. The video itself is something like me being really awkward and going, "Hey everybody, I'm gonna start a new channel, and in it I will review technology," something like that. Because I've seen a lot of these. If you go to YouTube comments, holy shoot, did I just cut myself? If you go to the YouTube comments for pretty much anyone who's a larger YouTuber, you're going to find, and it's easy to spot, people who are like trying to plug their channels. Either they do it kind of secretly, and like, "Man, as an upcoming artist, this speaks volumes to me." And then you'll see a comment that's like, "Hey man, checked out your channel, it's great stuff." And then you'll see another one that's like, "Yeah, absolutely, checked it out." And then you go to the channel, and it's either going to be really good, or it's going to be like, "Hey guys, it's blah 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 here. Now I'm going to start this channel as soon as I get 100 subscribers. So if you like it, please like the video." And people always do I'll do it later. It's not like you have a finished product and then you're showing people. It's more like, I will show you the finished product, but I want the audience first, which isn't how it works, except on YouTube, because that's how it works. And I'm not trying to make fun of people who are awkward on camera, because that was me 1,000,000%. My first video is so cringing to watch. I don't watch it. If this video gets 100,000 likes, I will react to my old videos, which are super cringy. And I hate the word cringe, but that's what it was. Speaking of cringe has become overused. I used it because I was talking to myself, and that's because I actually do cringe. Like, cringe is like, this is the face, that's the noise, That's what actually happens when you cringe. But I think I don't like to refer to other people as being cringy unless it's something flat out obvious. Like they didn't intend it to be cringy, but it kind of is. Like when someone is hyping themselves up too much. That's kind of cringy because they're like in their own bubble. I think Logan Paul and Rice Gum, I think they're super cringy because they're flexing with like $1 million houses, and they're always like, "I'm so cool because I have all this money." But then I'm like, you're kind of just like gloating to 10-year-olds. That's just cringy to me. Whereas I don't think I'm cringy with this new character that I've made, Long Transaction, because I tend to be cringy and tend to be stupid and like awkward. My whole character is that I'm socially awkward, because in real life I am socially awkward. In social situations, I've learned to not be awkward because I know I kind of know what people expect, but it's not like I was naturally someone very talkative and outgoing. I've kind of just learned it, which is a trait that people who have autism, I don't have autism, and I'm not making fun of people who have autism, but that's like a trait that people with autism learn from hospitals, how to kind of understand social cues based off of just learning experiences. But I'm just socially awkward. That's my thing. I'm getting off track, but social anxiety, actually, I've done 2 songs. I've done 2 rap songs called Social Anxiety, and then Social Anxiety 2. And in those, I exaggerate some stuff, but there is some truth behind that, because I get anxiety, kind of like what I was talking about earlier with wanting to be accepted on YouTube in terms of views and subscribers. That's social anxiety for me, but it's through social media. But then also, I get, particularly at work, I get like anxiety that, oh no, something's not going right. The boss is going to get mad. I'm going to like get yelled at, which would never happen. Like there's like a 3% chance that would happen. And I think it might be because I used to, when I would play baseball, for some reason in the South, which is where I'm from, baseball coaches, basketball coaches, football coaches, pretty much sports people in general, maybe not even specifically in the South, just in general, all over the world. For some reason, it's okay for managers to be, or it's managers or coaches to be just general, like, douchebags. I don't know. I don't know why that's accepted. Like, you can't, in no other work environment is it okay for someone just to start yelling. Especially when we were in high school, we were in middle school, I'm trying to think if I got yelled at when we were little. In baseball, you didn't really get yelled at too much. In high school baseball, I got yelled at. Middle school football, holy crap, I have a really weird story. Middle school football. So, well, let me finish that other thought though. But I learned to get anxiety because I knew if I didn't do something right, the coach would yell at me. I didn't like getting yelled at. So then I would always try to make things proper before he checked it, or I would do things right the first time because I didn't want to get benched. I didn't want to get yelled at. So then that has kind of like clung on to me, where I always try to make things right the first time because I have some weird anxiety that if something's not to par, I will get benched. There will be some repercussion for me, which it's kind of a good thing because whatever job I've had, I've always been a good worker because I pay so much attention to detail. I'm really detail oriented because I don't want to get yelled at. But back to my story. In 6th grade, you weren't allowed to play football. You had to be 7th or 8th grade. So I was I was really small. I was like 5'4", maybe 130 pounds, I think. So I was really small, and we had this. Well, okay. In 6th grade, I was the water boy, which was a thing that people would do because they knew if you were a water boy for a year, then that meant next year you would definitely make the team, no matter what. Our team sucked anyway. We were like 0-7. We hadn't won in several years, but I just wanted to make sure. And I mean, it was okay. I was kind of boring just being on the sidelines giving people water, but we did it, whatever. So then 7th grade came around and I was on the team. And to give you a description of our head coach, he was a Native American guy who he always talked about his high school days and playing. I guess his high school team was really good, but then this is the thing about him. He was a punter. Like, I don't know, some of you guys might not know that position, but basically they are always made fun of because they're not a real football player in the sense that they don't go around hitting people. Their main job is just to catch the ball and kick the ball. And they don't play every down. They play like whenever it's 4th down and they have to punt a ball really far. So maybe they get up to 10 plays a game at the most. Maybe even that's kind of stretching it. So he would always talk about football and he was a punter. And it's just, that's like so weird. That's kind of like in soccer terms, if you had some guy who was your head coach and he was always talking about like the fundamentals of soccer. And then he was like a 3rd string left back in Sunday League or something ridiculous like that. Not to that extreme. If anyone here is a punter, I still respect you. I think it's just kind of funny. So he would always tell these stories in his high school about like all the Division I athletes that he would have to play against. And then the whole time I'm just sitting there like, what do you mean you play against? You were punting. You would catch the ball and punt. Or he had the story how like his long snapper, the guy who would snap the ball, he would catch it, was Division I, so it would hurt his hands when he had to catch the ball. And I'm like, this is just ridiculous. But anyway, the story was, so we're all in middle school. We're 7th and 8th graders. The biggest one of us is maybe like 6 feet tall, 170 pounds, but it's not like he's a built 6 foot tall, 170. He's kind of just like a tall, kind of like awkward kid who happens to weigh more because he hit a growth spurt. So none of us are physically strong, really. We're all just weak little boys. And then one day the coach isn't there. The guy I'm talking about, he wasn't there. Our assistants were starting us with the drills, and we're going through like stretching, and we're throwing the football around, and we're like, where's the coach? What's going on? And then just this giant dude, and he's Native American, so he had a ponytail. This giant dude, he's probably like 6'1", maybe like 180 pounds. He's pretty big, and he's 40 years old, probably, maybe 35. So it's not like he's in the prime of his life, but he probably lifts weights. He's in good shape. He just comes out in full white, in full pads, and we're like, what is he doing? What? And so he suited up. He suited up to practice with middle schoolers, and not just like, I want to play quarterback, I want to throw, or I want to punt and see how you guys fare. He suited up in full pads and then started to go into hitting drills with us, or like doing 7-on-7 drills. So he was just laying us out. He was just hitting us as hard as possible. And I was like, what the heck is going on? Luckily, I did not get hit by him, because I was like 5'5" at the most. I would have just been destroyed. But then, so I had a couple drills where I was in the same area as him. But luckily, like I said, he didn't hit me. But then eventually I moved to the opposite end of the field, and I was doing some other drills with people. And then once that finished, I walked back over to the main area where the water is, and I saw one of our teammates. He was just like sitting on the sideline, his helmet off, his shoulder pads off, and he's just sitting there like that. Like he looks stunned. He looks shell-shocked. And I was like, what's wrong with him? And then turns out he was in the drill with the head coach and got absolutely rocked and got a concussion. And I was like, you can't, that's child abuse. You can't just lay out a 12-year-old. What is this? Now that I think about this, at the time, I was 11, I was 12. I thought that was really weird. Looking back on it now, as a 21-year-old, I'm like, I don't think that's legal. I don't think you're allowed to do that. But alas, he did it. On that day, a 35-year-old Native American man, ex-punter in high school, mind you, laid out a 12-year-old and gave him a concussion. And it was great. It was hilarious. And whenever I think about that, I just think about how absolutely crazy that was. This was the same guy who, he asked me, in between 7th and 8th grade, he saw that I was wearing a shirt that said baseball, and he asked me what position I played, and I told him I was a pitcher. So then he's like, oh, you want to try out for quarterback next year? This is coming off the back of an 0-7 or 0-8 season in which several of our players broke their collarbones or got severely injured, and our quarterback got injured because we were just way too small and would just get destroyed by the opposing teams. So he asked me that, and I'm like, oh yeah, sure, that sounds great. And then I didn't try out for the next year because I didn't want to die. Yeah, that was great. We're at 38 minutes. I think I don't know how long I want these to be. I think I can go for a little bit longer. I want to talk, I guess this will be the last point. I think that sports in the southeastern part of the United States, I think anything below high school, okay, high school inclusive, anything below college, like they take sports way too seriously. Because in the South, it's kind of like you have the mentality that you gotta just toughen up and just don't listen to your body, just do what has to be done. And of course it's going to be painful because that's just how it is. But I always thought it was so strange because that's not a mentality that I've noticed going from American sports into European, like how soccer coaches are. It's just a completely different world because like this is something that I could picture. In the South, let's say that your hamstring is tight. You're playing football, American football. The coach would basically, unless you're like really injured, I could see coaches be like, toughen up, you got to man up, you got to just work through it. Something like that. Whereas in soccer, it's like your hamstring's tight, you just signal to the coach, you're like, hey, my hamstring's tight, I gotta stop. And like, there's no questions asked, you just stop because it's for your health. And the weird thing is, what I'm talking about is like in high school or below. If you're in the NFL and your hamstring's tight, you're gonna just tell your trainer, and you're not gonna go injure yourself. But it's like, because people think that you're a kid, because you are a kid, you don't deserve the same respect as when you're an adult, which I just think is so strange. I used to like do whatever my coach said, no questions asked, because I always assumed he's old, he must be right all the time. But now looking back at them, or I've been watching this show, it's called QB1, Beyond the Lights or something. It's like the second season. It's a really good show. It's on complex.com if you want to watch it, where they follow high school quarterbacks. And the entire time, it's just like coaches yelling, especially they're following one coach in South Carolina. And he's just like, the entire time, he's just yelling at these kids, like high school kids. And I'm like, how is that benefiting anyone just to yell at people? It's because if you know anything about psychology or teaching people, in no other situation is it beneficial if you like make fun of someone and then try to teach them beyond that. I'll give you an example. They were playing really poorly in the first half. Everyone was probably really nervous because it was the first game of the season. And so the coach is like, what's wrong with you, boy? You nervous? You nervous? Say something. Crack a smile. Why are you so nervous? And he's like just getting on him about not performing well. And I'm just thinking, obviously he's nervous, and you just pointing out the fact that he's nervous, that's not going to help. It's just going to make him more nervous, more self-conscious, but like, oh, I'm nervous, I got to not do that. Oh no, the coach is like mad at me, oh, I got to do better. And I just think it's so weird that in any other social situation, you wouldn't do that. You especially wouldn't do it to a kid. Like, you wouldn't just start yelling. Let's say you're a math teacher and this kid just starts screwing up derivatives. I don't know. Let's say he forgets the power rule. You wouldn't just go up to him and be like, x squared? You don't know the derivative? You don't know dx over dy? X squared? Come on, son, it's 2x. I showed my math prowess there. That wouldn't happen. Like, it just wouldn't. So what makes it any different because it's on a football field? I think it's because the adrenaline kicks in. People think you got to like toughen them up because football's a contact sport. But that just seems so strange to me. And it makes no sense. But the point, because I know a lot of you guys aren't from the U.S., I want to know, I know in England that you kind of get, in the lower leagues, you kind of get like those hard-nosed coaches who are like, you know, throwing tackles in there, play English football, I guess. English soccer, where you're kind of like just knocking everyone over, having hard challenges, and you got to play through stuff. But I mean, I'm curious, especially in countries like Scandinavia, because I know some of you guys are from Scandinavia. They don't come off as the kind of people who take the approach of yelling at people to make them toughen up. They seem more like they're pragmatic in the fact that they treat things like math equations or like physics problems, and there's a certain way based off of science to figure things out. Maybe it's psychology, maybe it's actual human biology of how body parts work, something like that. I don't know. I know as someone who's kind of been in, I've never been to Germany. I'm not an expert in German culture, but I know they would take more they would not just start yelling blatantly at someone, because they know based off of science, that's where like everything seems to come from for their opinions. That's not how it's going to work. That's not the best way to get the intended result. The whole thing that Germans are about seems to be efficiency and getting the best result. And based off of practices and tests and social sciences and everything, they can figure out, all right, yelling at someone isn't going to be the best way to do something. You have to treat them in a certain way. I don't know. That's just, I'm curious to know. Tell me in the comments, if you get to this part, what country you're from, or it doesn't even have to be what country you're from. You could just tell me, in a country, how would they react to a situation like this? Like, would a coach just yell at someone, or would they try to teach them the proper technique and be more understanding? Do they treat adults? I mean, do adults treat kids in sports situations more like adults, or does it change as you become older? I don't know. I'm actually genuinely curious about that. I think that was a good podcast. 45 minutes. I think we got through some stuff. I wasn't super rambly, I don't think. I covered new things. That's the main point. Hope you guys did enjoy it. Please let me know. There was something kind of that I wanted to talk about, but I don't want this podcast to go on too long, so I will save it for a future episode. This was fun, guys. Hope you did enjoy it. I'll try to do these once a week. I should be able to do them on the weekends, but yeah. Let me know if there's anything you guys want to hear next podcast. Hope it was super chill. Hope it banged your ears. And I'll see you boys next time. Don't forget to spay your pets.